It says preparing to live stream. 50% chance that we're already live. The beginning is always very awkward. I think we're live now. Yeah, we're definitely live. All right. So this week I am joined by a very special guest, Gareth Pickering. He is the founder of Father Sons Brothers, which is a I would say a multifaceted organization in the men's coaching space. He's a thought leader, an entrepreneur, and I'm really excited to learn more about you, Gareth, and the work you're doing. So welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, bud. It feels good to have you interviewing me this time after you were on my podcast a little while ago. So thanks for
Yeah,
hosting me, man. Good to see you.
yeah, exactly. So we did another conversation on air a couple weeks ago, maybe, and I actually rewatched that, which maybe that's kind of weird, but a few takeaways are I need to have less pauses when I'm speaking. And also I really like you as a human being. And also of the maybe 1,500 coaches I've met, you are like by far the most similar to what I'm doing. It's kind of
Mm.
freaky how much we have in common, I think. So
Interesting. Thank you. What are the similarities that you see in what we're both doing?
um well, we are working in the men's coaching space and helping people develop businesses. And also our story of leaving our home countries around the same age, I think around kind of 35,
Yeah.
and packing up. My story does not have a 50,000 to $1 million Bitcoin uh, cashing in part, but other than that, pretty similar. And I'm just really looking forward to learning more about some of the details, as well as some of the details about your work, because there's so much about it that I don't know. Um, I noticed that you're doing an in-person event there in San Marcos, Guatemala now, amongst
Yeah.
many other things.
Yeah. We did our first one
Yeah.
today.
Oh,
So
that was
yeah.
today. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How
So
did
it
that
happened
go?
this morning. It was beautiful. In many ways, it was me stepping in, and this has been part of my journey of being a men's coach and being a thought leader in this space, and also building the business of Father Sons Brothers has been a lot of stepping up and stepping in, including the days that I don't feel like doing it or the days that I have some self-doubt around whatever that looks like. And so, yeah, I live in San Marcos on Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, which is quite a transient place, a lot of tourists, quite a lot of people coming here for healing and plant medicine and those sorts of things. And there hasn't really been a public facing men's circle. I'm part of a closed circle here of long-term residents that live here, and every single week we have a circle, but there does feel like there's been a bit of a vacuum or a space for an in-person men's circle to be in this community. And I feel like I know that it's been mine to do, but I haven't quite stepped in. And today was the first one of those, and it's been in production with an event space here called Eagle's Nest. And so yeah, we did our first
Mhm.
one today, and yeah, it's in the awareness now, and I'm excited to have a space to be able to offer people coming through the opportunity to experience men's work, because our closed circle, we don't invite other people in. It's really only for men that are here long term. So
Yeah.
while I have an anchor point of that in my own life, if someone passes through and they're looking for men's work, well, I don't have anything to offer them except doing one-on-one coaching, which I've done. But I'm excited to be holding an in-person space here to offer people
Mhm.
the opportunity to be able to journey with men's work in the way that I came into men's work, which was, yeah, moving through a space that had a men's circle. And I was like, what is that? Let me check it out. So it feels good to be able to hold point for that. And yeah, the first one was today.
Nice, nice. And just listening to that brings back so many memories of my time in San Marcos. And yeah, there are many people coming and going. I was there for maybe 5 weeks, something like that. And I think that's pretty common for like here where I live, people come for like a week and it's really fast there. I think it's all sorts of different lengths, but sometimes people are there for like maybe a month. And Eagle's Nest is just absolutely spectacular. It's this kind of dance floor on on the side of a hill overlooking what some people say is the most beautiful lake in the world. And I can imagine it must have been a really beautiful moment.
Yeah, man. And
Um,
yeah, it's also
yeah.
it's an opportunity for me to share, in addition to the men's work, which I love, I've also included other parts of this experience which I love as well, which is the land journey. You know, this land is so beautiful, so rich in culture and nature. And so yeah, it included a silent hike and a swim in a waterfall. And so yeah, I'm weaving that into the experience as well. So it feels good to be able to share both of those parts, you know, the men's work and the technology of men's work, which I'm so excited about. But then also the
Mhm.
land, which has been so healing and supportive for me on my journey of living here. I just feel like I've been so held by this land that it feels
Mhm.
like it's time to share it. And so yeah, to be in service today feels like an important step on my journey.
Awesome.
Yeah.
One of the other things that you've inspired me to do is step up my production value. And this is the very first time I've set up this light, and it's like so bright.
Mm.
I guess I just have to get used to it.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I'd like to kind of go back in time with your journey about I'm really curious to know how you got into this work, and you shared that you used to run a advertising agency, and me, I use different terms. I used to work in marketing and e-commerce, and probably a little bit different, but some similarities there. And then we talked about how I booked the one-way ticket to Mexico, and you left South Africa and you went to Indonesia or Philippines, and then many countries before arriving in Guatemala. And yeah, I guess I just would love to hear more about all those adventures, but also at what point did you start to move into the work that you're doing now?
Thank you, bro. Yeah, you know, the journey it's never a straight line from what I can tell. You know, it's not like you wake up one day and you're just like, oh, I think I'm going to go and be a men's coach. From what I can tell, it's mostly a murky path. And for me, it was definitely a crisis of meaning slash dark night of the soul slash I don't know which way the fuck is even up or what even makes sense anymore in order for me to make the decision that I did in 2014, which, as you said, I was like, I think I was 33 when I left South Africa. And
Mhm.
yeah, it had been on the back of, I call it chasing brass rings and ticking boxes. You know, like in my world, the thing that was the most important as I grew up and became a man was okay, the people that have the most money are the most successful in inverted commas. And
Mhm.
yeah, that looks like the path that I should be taking. And so I made choices in my life that were really mostly anchored around money with very little consideration for how I chose to spend my time, meaning I wasn't very conscious of when I started my advertising agency to say, is this really what I want to do? Is this the type of people that I want to work with? If this becomes successful, would I be happy with it? I sort of just landed in it. And because we got paid for our first client, it was like, oh, here's a way to make money. And it sort of evolved in that way. And, you know, I think what I deemed success to look like in my life, and I'm very clear about this now on reflection, because, you know, when I was in my early 20s, I didn't know what to do. So when I first left high school, it was like, okay, now you got to go and study something. And I was like, shit, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no idea. And so I was lucky enough to take some time to go traveling, which ended me up in London for a while. And I worked in a bar and I did a couple of things like that, which I loved. And then there was the sense of like, okay, dude, you can't just be a bartender or a restaurant manager forever. You've got to go and do something important or significant. And so I was like, okay, what's that going to be? At the time, I had a friend who was a stockbroker, and he told me over dinner one night, he's like, dude, I had a £3 million bonus this year. And I was like, oh my God,
Wow.
that's me. That's what I need to do. That's the
Yeah.
path. It was a sign from above that this is what I needed to do. So again, without any consideration of my choice, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to go and learn to be a stockbroker. So I went and back to
Okay.
South Africa, learned how to trade, learned how to balance portfolios and analyze risk, tried my hardest to get a job in stockbroking, didn't happen, ended up in my advertising agency, still chasing money because I thought that was going to be the thing that I was being called to do. And yeah, in many ways was successful in inverted commas of what I deemed success to be. But I
Mhm.
think when I look at the 10-year window of what my life was while I was running my own business, probably for the last 4 years, if I'd really been listening, there was a part of me inside that wasn't happy, like the sun, maybe like an empty feeling of like, I could see my life stretching out in front of me on this timeline of like, okay, 6 years in, I'm making money, I'm paying bills, I've built this business, I've got clients, I've got a house, I've bought a second property, I've got a car, I've bought a jet ski. So I'm doing all the things, but there's just some part of me that just feels a little restless. And what I now understand is that if you don't listen to that restlessness over time, I actually call it God whispers. And this is the
Right.
sense that God is like giving you a sense at some point that starts off like, Gareth, try something different. If you choose not
Mhm.
to listen to it, he's like, Gareth, try something different. If you still choose not to listen to it, he's sort of like eventually shouting and eventually rolls a boulder down the hill. And I think the soul, this is how I understand it now, the soul at some point wants to do something a bit more meaningful. It came here for something more meaningful than just
Yeah.
making myself a slave to my customers. And my customers at the time were Pepsi Cola. They were my biggest clients.
Okay.
And, I was in the matrix of doing all of these things, but some part of me felt uncomfortable. And I now understand it to be like somebody was sending me a message to do something else. Like your life is going to be more than this. And I
Mhm.
suppose I should have listened 4 years earlier. It took my life getting to a place of a real mess, which looked like sex addiction, drinking too much, going out every single night, being completely um, uncomfortable being by myself. Every single night I was at home alone in this beautiful house that I bought for myself. I was single at the time. I would be on Tinder trying to find somebody to connect with, or I'd be out with my mates trying to drink beers just to avoid this uncomfortable feeling that I felt in my life that I didn't know how else to articulate. But yeah, that's the sort of short version of what unfolded in my life
Yeah.
over this period. And when I looked around my life one morning, I was just like, I have lay awake pretty much every night this week feeling uncomfortable about this business that I've built. And at the meantime, the business is also starting to crumble because I think that's also part of the process. When you lose the passion for what you were once excited about, it starts to be reflected back in your reality. And so at the time, I was feeling empty. And despite my best efforts of doing what I had always done, the business was starting to fail and I was starting to feel like a failure. I didn't have any of the tools that I have in my life right now, like a men's circle where I could go and sit amongst men that I love and trust and be like, I'm having a really fucking rough time here. What it actually looked like is I would go for beers, let's say you and I, and you'd be like, hey, Gareth, how's work going? And I'd be like, no, we're good. Having a bit of a challenge at the moment, but we're going to carry on. How things with you? And I would sort of try and shift the conversation in a way that I just gave myself some space to avoid having these difficult conversations because I just couldn't be authentic. And I thought that I had to be somebody that I thought the world wanted me to be instead of just being me. So
Yeah.
yeah, and one morning I just woke up and I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. I just need to get out of this. I had a business partner at the time. I sat down with her and I said, listen, I just need to tell you that I don't think I can do this anymore. And
Mhm.
she had been one of the reasons that I think it took me so long to make this decision because I had thought that perhaps this was going to be an explosion. I would be letting her down. And there was all this story that I'd created. And I sort of delivered the news expecting there to be an explosion. And rather than an explosion, I was met with pure love. And she was like, yeah, I was wondering when you were going to say that. It feels like you've been
Oh
feeling that
yeah.
for a while. And I was like, oh God, and a realization in my life that often we make things to be more expensive and more challenging than they actually are, predicting
Mhm.
what we think other people will think instead of being in our truth. And so, yeah, so that was the start of it. I call it my eat, pray, love journey, which was just
Right.
changing my life and buying a one-way ticket, which started in the UK and ended up including multiple countries and really just falling back in love with myself. And that's really been the journey. And along the way, how I ended up being a coach was like I was posting some stuff on Facebook as I was learning to surf in the Philippines or, just exploring different parts of the world. And part of the adventure when I left was this real sense like I'd always had a bucket list of things that I wanted to do. These are things I want to do in my life. And I looked at this list and I was like, there's more things on this list than I can see time to be able to tick them off with this current advertising agency gig that I've got. I've got a team of people. I take 2 weeks of leave a year. For the rest of the time, I'm grinding. I can't see myself ticking off the 100 things that I have on my list. And so when I gave myself permission to go traveling, I said, okay, you've got 6 months, go out there, tick off as many things as you can do on your list, and then you can come back and start another business. That was my original plan. And
Mhm.
yeah, in that 6 month period, I things came easy to me. That was the Bitcoin story that I shared, where I invested some money into crypto. I made more money in the 6 months while I was surfing, not working, than I made in the 10 years of being in my advertising agency. That was a mind fuck. I was like, how does that
Hmm.
happen? How did I make more money doing nothing than I did when I was working? That was like an
Yeah.
important piece for me to go into self-inquiry around. But then obviously my energy started to shift. I started to be in a place of being more comfortable with myself. I was living a life that felt like fun. I didn't have the constraints and some of the heaviness of building my own business. And so people would reach out to me and be like, hey, Gareth, please, can you help me? Need to make a tough decision in my life. These messages would come through like from social media. And I would be like, sorry, bro, you got the wrong number. I don't even know where the fuck I'm going at the moment. I'm just
Hmm.
fumbling around in the dark here. But obviously something in my energy had started to shift. I'd got to this place of just feeling a lot more light, a lot more excited about the world. And so, yeah, so I jumped on a call with a few of these people along the way. My spiritual path started to open up. I had been an atheist before, which was my way of creating some space between conservative Christian religion in the home that I'd been brought up in. Atheism gave me the space of like anything but that. I found that a difficult way to live eventually, because nothing seems to matter if you just die and the lights go out. And so yeah, along the way I found my meditation practice, and I found tantra, um, conscious sexuality, authentic relating. My meditation practice was also a huge part of that. I spent some time in a dark retreat. And so I found all these different modalities, plant medicine, and really through that, there's many different paths, but I was really finding myself. And that's really where I came to this place of people coming into my world, where I started coaching. And then the final piece of the story, where it leads me to at the moment, is the first time I stepped into a men's circle and got to share authentically about my sex addiction, which I had never spoken about before. It had been this sort of
Hmm.
skeleton in my cupboard that I had used to make myself feel better, and had been something that I felt ashamed about. I shared it in this men's circle, and it was received without judgment from the men inside the circle. And when I shared it, there was a part of me that was like, oh my God, I felt like I'd put down a rock that I'd been carrying for most of my life, and I just didn't have to pick it up again. And I was like, wow, this is fucking powerful, powerful, powerful medicine. And so I stepped back out of the circle, having shared this experience in a really safe, well held container. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Only to have like two or three other men come up to me and be like, thank you so much for what you shared. It really has supported me. And then the lights went on, and I was like, whoa, not only is this serving me, but it also serves the other men in the circle. And I'm sure you've heard the men's work statement of your work is my work. When you shared your journey on my podcast of the day that you spent the night in McDonald's and your life just went fucking upside down and you went to that dark
Yeah.
night of the soul. When I hear that, I'm like, oh, I've had one of those, and I'm not alone in this struggle. And so I really
Yeah.
started to see the pieces of how this technology of the men's circle has been so powerful for my healing journey, that was sort of the final refinement of where I find myself now, of like, okay, I know I want to be in service. I know that I have a gift to be able to bridge the world of the Gareth of 10 years ago, who was just not connected to a spiritual path at all, stuck in the matrix, just grinding. I know I can speak to that person because I've been there. And the version of me now that has walked this path, that has learned to love myself a bit more, that has learned to accept the things in my life as true, combined with all of the modalities that I've practiced, feels like how I got to be, in service of men at the moment. And so that's really been my journey, which, yeah, is not a straight line, and
Hmm.
it's not pretty. And yeah, at times it was like I had no idea where I was going, and I had to really reach a bottom, which I think is such an important piece of the journey. A lot of people
Hmm.
that I work with tend to want to avoid those difficult things in life. We just want to go through life cruising on the easy path. But, like your experience, if you hadn't had that like really bottom part of like everything, just life's just, this is God rolling this rock down the hill, you haven't listened for the last 4 years. And then it's like everything fucking collapses. And then you're like, oh, okay. Since everything's already broken, I might as well try something new. And I had to get to
Yeah.
that point before I bought my one-way ticket. And then, yeah, the end of the story is that my 6 month journey ended up with me living in Guatemala 10 years later, and never
Hmm.
quite going back, the hero's journey, the path of,
Yeah.
experiencing exactly where your path leads you without knowing where it's going. So the journey always
Yeah.
requires that you have to take like, that first step in faith, because you can go back.
Yes.
You can go to that bottom and be like, well, I'll just go back to work tomorrow, and just decide not to take that step. There is often that choice point where you have to take the next step in faith without knowing what's going to happen. But it's like, okay, I'll go for 6 months and see what unfolds. So
Hmm.
that's been it. And I've noticed that in many people's journeys, my clients that I work with that have been through that same piece where Martin Luther King saying is, you may not see the entire staircase, but you must take the first step in faith. You just need to see the first step and
Absolutely.
trust.
Yeah, there's just something like inherent in it that it's impossible to see what's beyond when you're stepping out into the unknown. It's kind of by its nature, you cannot see it. So you do have to take that step in faith. Yeah.
Hmm.
And a couple of things that jumped out at me as I was listening to you is I I feel like some of like you're sort of laying the groundwork for the next phase in your life with the stockbroker stuff. That gave you the skill set in order to make the smart investment in Bitcoin. And then with the advertising agency, I think that gave you professional skills that you're now using with father, sons, brothers. Um, but I also feel like it was your time to it was almost like your karma had been resolved or something, and it was sort of your destiny to move into a purpose-based life, where you all the conditions were in place to allow you to do what you're doing now. And it was like kind of like the universe wanted you to have that money because you made some very smart moves, but there was also some luck there, just kind of being in the right place at the right time, I think, with the Bitcoin. And but it was just kind of meant to be, right? And now you have a beautiful home in Guatemala and you're able to do the work that you're doing. Um, I I've been wondering about father, sons, brothers. What are the different kind of dimensions of it? Like, can you kind of can you kind of walk us through what are the different parts of what's going
Hmm.
on with there, like in there?
Thank you, bro. Yeah, I would love to. I just want to quickly just reflect two things on that original piece which you shared. And one of them is that I think we all have a unique life experience that's completely fucking unique to us. Even if you and I have done the
Mhm.
exact same things in our life, we haven't done them at the same time. We haven't done them with the same parents. Our paths are uniquely different. And so there is this place of trusting that I come to this place where I want to live my life that's like I'm being supported in every single moment to show up. And so sometimes we don't know what that looks like, and sometimes it feels messy, but we're gifted these experiences and these choices that we've made that have got us to exactly where we are at this particular point in our life. And tuning into what feels like your unique gift to share, whatever that is, I think is a man's work to do in this lifetime. I think it's your responsibility to find out what is yours to bring, and it doesn't have to be men's work. It doesn't have to be saving the world. It doesn't even have to be a big thing, but it has to be uniquely yours. And it has to be something that you feel is being in service to make your life meaningful. And so I think there's a piece in that for those listening, which is, you know, follow that bliss. And I think you might have even said this in the last podcast, which I've been using since then, is like it's not complicated. It's difficult, but not complicated. The sense
Oh,
that
that's
was
so
that you?
funny. I got that from you. Probably
Oh,
you
maybe
got
I'd
it from
heard it
some,
from somebody
but
else.
but I like that so much that I actually so each Monday morning I'll drop a message into the group chat of my group, my
Mm-hmm.
community, and I
Mm-hmm.
actually quoted that Monday like
Maybe I
to
heard it from, I
inspire my
definitely heard
guys.
it recently, and I think we shared in my
Mhm.
podcast. There are
Yeah.
these ideas that come through the collective, and what that theme means for me is like when you sit still for long enough and you really listen, you can hear what's alive and what's true for you in your life. It doesn't mean that it's easy. You might look at your relationship and be like, actually, this is not the relationship for me. It doesn't mean it's easy to extract yourself out of it and go and be single and find the right person. But when you dial in, you actually do know, if you choose not to busy yourself with distractions and getting drunk or you're falling into addictions. But when you tune in, you can tell there is a sense that you're being guided when you give yourself the permission to listen to. So meaning it's not
Mhm.
complicated, but it also could be difficult. So that's definitely been
Mhm.
part of the journey. So I think that's the one piece I just want to bring into this, which is for those listening, it may feel like, oh, there's so many things I don't know quite what to do. I think the responsibility is to let go of the noise and to just deeply tune into what you're being called to do. And if it feels like your relationship or your job or your city that you live in or whatever it is creating unease in the being, just tune in and see like, okay, is this a full fuck yes for me at the moment? And it doesn't mean it's always going to be a fuck yes. It doesn't mean your relationships will be amazing. You're going to have ups and downs for sure. But if it's continually not a fuck yes, you have a responsibility to tune into that and then make a choice that gets you back into alignment with what is a full fuck yes with regards
Mhm.
to relationship, where you live, your job, etc. So yeah, that's the one piece that I want to share. And then the second one
Mhm.
is part of my journey has also been that Bitcoin story was 50,000 to 1 million to 150,000. Like there was a big up and a big down, and I cashed
Mhm.
out at the bottom. And so, that's
Mhm.
also been a really important lesson for me around a few themes. Greed is one of them, which is like when it was
Mhm.
going up, I thought I was invincible. I thought I wasn't attached to it. When it came down, I noticed I gave myself a really hard time about it. And I actually, on reflection, recognize the importance of what it meant for me to not have cashed out at the top. Meaning, if I'd
Mhm.
had $1 million, I don't think I would have focused as much on my business as I am at the moment, because I would have been flush. I would have been like, oh, cool.
I
I'm just going
see.
to fucking, buy 3 properties and I'm just going to sit. And perhaps my life would have looked very different. Because it came
Mhm.
back down again, I was like, oh, this is not enough to just live on for the rest of my life. And so my purpose work suddenly came back in as an area of focus. And that was an important lesson for me to learn, because I was
Mhm.
really angry about myself, because when it was $1 million and I was bawling, I thought I was amazing. And then
Mhm.
and yeah, so that was the part of the journey. And so anyway, Father, Sons, Brothers is a community of men that's really anchored around the theme for me that at each level of masculinity, we have gifts for one another, meaning the young energy of young men brings with it a naivety, but an excitement and a lust for life that can only come from having been a 17-year-old in this body, in a male body. And as we get to middle age, you integrate some lessons, you get knocked down, you learn a few things, you get your heart broken, you make money, you lose money, and then you get to this place which I call, coming out of the phase of being the prince and more into the king energy, which is where I find myself in my life right now. I see myself as a young king, meaning
Mhm.
I'm at the stage of my life where I've been through some of these lessons and I've been knocked down, and it's now time for me to bring my gifts. And so I'm in that phase of my life. And
I
then
totally relate to that.
my father
Yeah.
is more in sort of the sage or the elder energy. And
Mhm.
I don't think we've done a very good job in our society, because of how we've chosen to live, to be able to connect the gifts that men have for one another when we were in ancient times sitting around a fire together, where the 15-year-old got to listen to his grandfather share something about a thing that we just don't have that space anymore. So Fathers, Sons, Brothers is really a representation of these different phases of life, and creating a space where men at all ages can come and share their gifts, but also learn from men that have walked the path before you, and men that are maybe further along in the journey, being inspired by the youngsters and giving them a sense of meaning. Because what I've noticed is that in the West, especially if we don't have a space where we can sit around a fire, men retire from corporate businesses and they sort of lack purpose. They don't quite know what to do. Their families are more nuclear than they are now. We don't all live in the same house. And so you retire from your corporate gig where you were important, making a lot of money, but you don't necessarily have a way to be able to share your gifts. For
Mhm.
me, as this young king in my life, I would really love to have access to men that have walked this path before me and can show me some of the pitfalls that I'm likely to fall into that I don't know yet, because I just haven't walked the path yet. And so Father, Sons, Brothers is really based on this space of creating men to come together of all ages and recognizing that we have gifts for one another at each of those various levels. So that's one of the themes. The way that it actually unfolds in practice is we've got 7 levels. And the first level is sort of, if you think about it like an outside ring, a way to be able to engage with men's work and the message that I'm sharing now through something like social media, or through listening to the podcast, or catching one of the videos that I make on YouTube or something like that, where you can engage in a way that just your investment is your attention. The second level that we have is your investment there is an email address, and you get the opportunity to engage in our WhatsApp group. So we say dangerous conversations held safely. So a safe space with an agreement frame for men to have conversations about some of the topics that we don't always have space to have conversations about in a WhatsApp group. The level after that is a financial investment for a do-it-yourself training. We've got some digital training programs that you can invest in and install things. I've got a program called the First 4%. And the first 4% is the 1 hour. When you take 1 hour and divide it by 24, it gives you 4%. The idea is that when you take 1 hour every single day and invest that 1 hour in yourself, it supports the other 96% of your life. So when you show up in the morning and you commit to a meditation practice for a while, you do some movement, you do some breath work, you set your intentions, you drink some water, you set yourself up with that 4%. That's a digital training program that men do on their own.
That's
The
cool.
level up from there is a live event where men participate. So this is going to be level 4 in the structure. So we have a thing called the King Circle, which is a free men's circle that takes place on the last Sunday of every single month. We have another experience called the Warrior Walk, which is a listening only experience for men to show up. So attending a live event where you're actively participating in the event. There's no financial investment there, but you're investing 2 hours for the King Circle or half an hour for the Warrior Walk. The level above that is level 5. That's a paid premium membership called the Fathers, Sons, Brothers Tribe. This is the theme that we share together. It's called the Tribe. And those are for men that have been through these live experiences, that are connected to men's work, that are like, okay, I really want to journey a little bit deeper with this and get to know men at a deeper level. And that includes a 6-month training program. It includes an additional circle for men that are just part of the tribe, where we get to journey a little bit deeper. We're already starting to speak the same language. We journey a bit deeper into topics like money and relationships and sex and all of those sorts of things inside the tribe. And then we've got mastery programs. So those are sort of between $5,000 to $10,000 programs where men will come to learn about something like the one we're offering in December is called Solo to Soulmate. And it's a relationship and sexual mastery program for men. So how to be able to show up fully in relationship, how to manifest the ideal partner, and then some practical applications of how to develop a self-activating intimacy practice so that you can show up as a better lover, clearing some of the shame around sexuality, for example. We've also got the Ignition program, which we spoke about the last time we chatted. That's for
I've
men
got
that are
an
looking
addiction
to
program.
yeah,
Totally
exactly.
different. Same there.
Exactly. So yeah, and that's a mastery program as well that supports men that want to share their gifts and build a purpose-based business around their particular unique expression. This purpose-based business is a journey that I know you're coaching men on, but it's taken me the last 10 years to realize what all the various pieces are, and it's not as simple as it looks. It's not a straight line. You really need to be clear on who you want to serve, what that problem is, how you want to engage with them. I talk in that program about lifestyle alignment, which I didn't have when I chose to be a stockbroker. At no point did I say, if this is successful, would I be happy sitting behind a screen for 12 hours a day looking at numbers? Like, that wasn't a question, and it seems kind of an important one. But if you're going to build a purpose-based business, I think it's important to structure the business around how you want your life to look. And that looks different for each individual person. You know, if you've got kids, you may want every Saturday morning off to go watch your kids play. So building the business around your life is part of that. And then the 7th level is an in-person retreat. So I've got an in-person leadership retreat happening here at the lake in March next year. And so that's basically how the business stacks up. And men can engage at whatever level they choose to, with various levels of investment and engagement at each level.
Awesome. I love I love how I feel like you're having so much fun with this. Like you're putting so much creativity into this, and it's inspiring me and the listeners, I'm sure, to we can just explore and create and make cool stuff. And it can be whatever we want it to be. There's no structure. And so And also to rewind a bit, you were talking about like the different phases of the life, the sage phase, the young king phase. Just minutes before we hopped in this live stream, I was actually doing like a video art project because I'm getting back into the more creative aspect of the marketing skills that
Mm.
because I when I started out it was just pure eccentric art, and then I realized I needed to kind of find a way to get into a job and the industry, and started doing graphics for like businesses. But now I'm reconnecting with that purely artistic side, but that's part of my tribe builders thing. And I was just doing a project that's so I've seen this style of content on Instagram that's like really fast flashing images. And I'm so inspired by it. And so I was just doing one that's a series of like this young boy who's just beginning his samurai training. I'm using AI to create the images, and then I'm like
Mm.
making it into a video. And then there's like a samurai, like a fully at his physical peak samurai, and then there's like a elderly
Mr.
joyful,
Miyagi or something.
yeah, like a zen monk, and it's kind of showing that
Mm,
that
beautiful.
that arc. So I thought it was kind of interesting that you're talking about the same thing. And yeah,
Do you notice that with men that you work with that fun seems to be a difficult thing for men to connect to?
that's a great question. I I find that, so my guys are, they're coaches, right? And I'm moving more and more into the emotional stuff and realizing that because I can give guys the marketing tactics and strategies, and sometimes they don't really excel with it because there's something deeper, a personal thing that they need to, right? And so as I evolve as a coach, I'm getting more into that stuff. And that was always my vision from the beginning, right? Is to blend it all together. And I do the marketing and the business stuff because that's what I felt most qualified to help people with because of my background. And I find that people have a lot of anxiety about creating stuff like artistic stuff and expressing themselves on social media.
Hmm.
And I'm always preaching like post more stuff, like just be free. And that's a universal thing, is that people are very nervous to tap into their creativity. And when when they can create from a place of fun, that's when the magic happens, because it is fun. It's so much fun creating content that gets attention for your coaching business, as you know, as a kind of one of the main benefits. And then fun with creating the coaching programs and coaching containers. Like when you were describing this, the seven, is it seven different layers?
Yes.
I just felt like so much passion and joy and creativity, almost like when we're little kids and we're playing, it's like um kids that are, so what, when I was a child, me and my best friend, we had something called the game, which is, do you know what Playmobil is?
No.
Like in Canada, that's okay. Playmobil is a type of toy, and you can buy, it's kind of like Lego, except you don't really construct it. But you can buy more and more sets and kind of add on to your universe. And
Okay.
the two of us had the game, and he had this really impressive collection of Playmobil, because pretty much every gift he ever got for his birthday and Christmas was just adding to his Playmobil collection.
Cool.
And it was never like, so every day after school we'd go and play the Playmobil, and we had this kind of ongoing, never-ending narrative of like different groups of characters, and I can't even remember, but there was conflict and stuff. And we never went like, oh my God, I'm wiped, I need a break from all this playing, I'm exhausted. It
Yes.
was never like that at all. It was just,
Right.
it energized us, the
Yes.
process of playing. And so that's that's where that's where we're really lucky, is if we can be creating our businesses that support our life and provide for us and it feels like play, that's such a beautiful thing. And I see people all the time in jobs, when I'm just out and about. And like I just went to a salad restaurant for lunch earlier, and there's a guy about my age and he's making salads back there. And like I did those kinds of jobs when I was like a teenager and in my 20s, and I I could have had a better attitude about it, but to me it was like torture and I hated it. And
Hmm.
and oh, but I'm so grateful that I'm not spending, well, here in Latin America, the hours are crazy, right? Like 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. Sometimes these people work. And so we're so lucky that we're free to not be spending our time doing that and get to kind of play and have fun and create stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed it's definitely been a theme in my life. Some sense that this has to be serious, and as soon as it becomes serious, it also sort of somehow becomes draining, and you don't always find the juice to be able to do it. And so, yeah, if you can connect to that element of fun. And I've noticed this with clients that I've worked with. A lot of men are like, okay, what do we need to do? Like taking it all seriously. And I have this one of these tools. It's called the Octagon, where you have 8 categories of your life, and you assess where you are on one of these scales. So how's your money game? How's your health? How's your relationships? And one of them is fun. Consistently, that's the lowest one for men. They tend
No
to look at
way.
like, yeah, I've got my game dialed in, I've got my relationship there, I'm da 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 da. Fun. Yeah, I don't really have a thing, like I go to gym
Mm.
or something, and it tends to be something that I think maybe just as a function of the script that we've been handed, perhaps as men, it's like, you got to do these things and show up. But yeah, as you said, it's really energizing and also really fucking attractive for people that you're perhaps wanting to work with when they feel you in your fun, because it's like, wow, something is there. You
Absolutely.
feel invigorated. You've got a different energy where you're in the space of playing. And playing could be, making salads if you feel like that's your gift, just to be in
Yes.
service and being a cook or, creating content
Very
or making
absolutely.
samurai
I'm glad
videos,
you
whatever
mentioned
it
that.
is, you can bring it into whatever it is that you want. But yeah, it's the frame with which you hold the thing that you do that matters. And when you make it feel like play or fun, yeah, the time just goes by and you feel inspired to do it. So yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
bringing that.
Yeah, that makes me think of, I had another guest on here a few weeks ago who, when he started his very first men's group, he asked two questions. Um, they were, what are you most afraid of? And what do you desire the most? And he
Mhm.
said that the men had a very difficult time answering the question, what do you desire the most? Which is different than fun, but I feel like there's a similarity there. It's like, I think we're kind of in survival mode and we lose sight of playing, having fun, being aware of what really lights us up. And we don't even know what we want because we're so focused on kind of avoiding disaster and avoiding, being out on the streets or whatever our fears are, that we forget. So yeah, it's, if we can
that
tap
theme has
back into
been
that.
that theme has been true for me in my life and also for men that I've worked with. And it's slightly different. I look at it as I think many of us have forgotten the ability to dream. It's the same thing. What
Oh
do you want?
yeah.
It's like what are your dreams? Like what do you allow yourself to what do you give yourself permission to dream into for your life, for example? Most people are
Mhm.
like, I have no idea. Or they create
Mhm.
something that's like a little bit of a stretch. And what I've noticed in my reality is fuck, we are only bound by our own self-imposed limiting beliefs around what we think we can create or have or desire. And one of the tools I actually shared right now with those listening, it's something very practical. Grab a piece of paper and a pen and give yourself permission to dream into what a perfect day would look like for you. When you do this exercise, you do it free from any of the constraints of your current life. So forget about what your life looks like right now. Grab a piece of paper and pen, grab a coffee, give yourself 20 minutes and write down what time you wake up. Where do you wake up? How do you feel? What do you do in your first morning of your day? And go through this. How much money do you make? Just dream, dream, dream. Allow yourself just to dream. And it's such a beautiful exercise to do. And one of this exercise came into my life in my early 20s through a book or something like that, and I wrote down what my perfect day would look like. And I wrote down that I wake up next to the ocean, I feel amazing, I wake up, I do CrossFit, maybe I do surfing, I've got an online business that pays passive income, blah blah blah. I wrote all of this down, filed it away, and completely forgot about it. The story that I told you earlier that included me going through my advertising agency, dark night of the soul, ended up on a beach in India after 6 months, when I was like, okay, my 6 months is up. I'm not going back to South Africa to start another business. What the fuck am I going to do now? I'm like, okay, let me plan for the next phase of my life. I went through my laptop and I've got a goals folder. And when I opened it up, I saw this perfect day exercise that I'd written down 10 years earlier. Justin, when I was reading it, I get goosebumps now when I talk about it. I'm like, I'm waking up on the beach, going surfing in the morning. I'm sitting in a coffee shop overlooking the ocean. I've got my coaching business. It wasn't passive income, but like so much of the stuff that I'd written down existed in my world around me. When I wrote it, I was like, it didn't seem like it was possible. But when I allowed myself just to do the exercise because I gave myself permission to, even without doing anything else, it showed up in my world. There was this really important moment that was like, okay, dude, give yourself permission
Nice.
to dream big dreams. Like, write down your new perfect day. What would the next
Yeah.
thing look like? Just do it. And yeah, it was just such a beautiful recognition for me
Nice.
that we've most of the time forgotten how to dream. It's like, okay, well, I've got this job. Maybe next year I'll get a 5% increase and I'll just, blah, blah, blah. And so your reality becomes a function of your belief systems. And as long as you hold
Hmm.
those belief systems, that's how your reality looks. I think our work to
Yes.
do is to continually question what we believe about money, about relationships, about the world, about all of the things. Continually ask those questions. Does this belief system serve me? Or do I want something else? And part of that wanting something else is giving yourself permission to dream. So, yeah, man, I feel that
Yeah.
same thing of asking me, like, what do you want? They're like, bit more cash, like, to be happy. Happy's great, but like, you can be more specific and give yourself permission to call into your life really whatever you desire. And I've noticed that my journey has been letting go as often as I can of the beliefs that hold me back about earnings, about where I live, about the impact that I can make, about, choosing to fly business class versus economy. Like, I had a belief system that was just too expensive and not worth it.
Hmm.
Why? Yeah, that could be true, but maybe you've got enough money that you just choose to fly business and you just cruise in there and turn left when on the plane when everyone else is turning right. I started to have that dream. And yeah, the last few times I've traveled, I've flown business and it's been like,
Well,
fuck, this is
I've never
amazing.
done it.
And,
Yeah.
and so just, but it doesn't have to be that, but just the opportunity to dream into things that you may have thought
Yeah.
were completely impossible, I think is a really, really powerful inquiry to go into. And this perfect day exercise is a great way to do it because it just makes you think
Yeah.
of one day in your life about what it could look like, free from the current constraints of what your life looks like, and then just see
Yeah.
what
Because
happens.
like if you could take one human being and drop them into another human being's life and maybe like put them inside of the other person's body or something, but they're still them,
Hmm.
their their life would completely change within a matter of hours. Like every single thing would change.
Hmm.
And it's like our existence is this, we've got this emotional home of kind of what we're used to feeling, like what we've always felt since childhood. It's kind of slowly gets upgraded over time. Maybe we have a painful experience, maybe we have a ayahuasca ceremony or something, or we have a relationship to where we learn a lot and it slowly evolves. And then we've got our thoughts, and then we've got our external reality that we're chipping away at and working on. And they all are kind of reflections of each other. And I'm so fascinated by this idea of taking like a quantum leap because I feel and I know that it's possible, it's right there for all of us, but we're just limited by our own, we're trapped within ourselves, but it's the pure potential is there. And
Amen, brother.
yeah, and this kind of gets back to this recurring theme as when we talk of that step of faith, that leap of faith. That's kind of
Mhm.
getting outside of that personal matrix of perceptions and emotions and
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is a topic I'm so interested in because what got me to thinking about this was the story that I told you earlier, which was like, I believed that I needed to work in my advertising agency, burrowing away, seeing clients, etc. When I left that world, I had 50 grand in my bank account and I thought I had done pretty well, only to find that I was now traveling the world. And just as a function of having met somebody, I invested in Bitcoin and went to 1 million. That made me really question the same thing, which is like, I made a fucking quantum leap here in a way that seemed impossible from the place where I was before. It's like I
Hmm.
couldn't see $1 million for me would have been another 10 years of really hard grinding and landing additional clients, etc., etc. The potentiality was there. The only thing between the version of me that managed to bring that into my reality and hustling for the next 10 years only to make another 50 grand is the choice or the ability to be able to step out of that paradigm, which you sometimes can't do because we're, like you said, conditioned by familiar feelings of like, okay, this is how money works, this is how the world works, this is how much blah blah blah, and so that starts to become your reality. And like you said, your world just reflects back to you what your belief systems are. When I was
Hmm.
free of that, I was like, oh, here's somebody who spoke about something that seems interesting, invest a little bit, invest a little bit. Suddenly it started to shift. And the next thing I'm, rolling in all of this money and I've done no work for it. Like I've just basically taken what I had and I've been surfing and I'm like, wow, this is also a possibility. And so the same thing that's really got me into this journey of understanding or trying to understand manifestation, the law of attraction, reality creation, reality hacking, this quantum leap thing that you're talking about is we're only limited by what we think we can create. And
Yeah.
those come from programming, they come from our parents, they come from our belief systems, they come from confirmed realities of continually showing up for 10 years, making this amount of money every single month. Okay, this is how it works. Well, yes, it's
Hmm.
how it works for you right now. But as you said, drop a billionaire into my body. By this time tomorrow, he's got, 100,000 in the bank. 2 weeks later, he's got 1 million. It's like that's just his
Yes.
reality. His belief system sees a different world, and his reality reflects that back to him. The work of the being is to continually tune in and question those beliefs and see where you're holding yourself back.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I tried to kind of impose a quantum leap on somebody that I cared about
Mm,
very dearly when I lived in Colombia, a young Venezuelan who came from the most harshest background. And I kind of attempted to totally change the reality for them. And they went back. They went back to yeah, um, the old ways because that was what felt normal to them. And people will take a what's that quote I heard recently? People will take a familiar, painful existence rather than the like the weird,
unknown.
unknown, like
Hmm.
beautiful new thing sometimes.
Yep.
And I think with that, maybe it came from not feeling worthy was part of it, shame, trauma.
Hmm.
So there's a healing process of allowing yourself to to feel, yes, I am worthy of that new reality. I am capable. And
Yeah.
yeah, I actually with the crazy huge rise and fall with your Bitcoin, I do have a little bit of a parallel story, which was my selling medical masks during the pandemic.
Yeah, you
So
had a good
I
run there. What was that story again?
yeah, but so we sold $6 million
Yeah.
in gosh, a year and a half. Probably 2 million of that was profit,
Hmm.
but I got completely screwed by the guy that I built the business with.
Okay.
I mean, I made decent money, like kind of like a professional, white senior level, white collar kind of professional.
Hmm.
But if like, because well, he's not the type of person to share. Typically, anybody who's ever worked with him, they never speak with him again. And
Okay.
that was my experience. And that was I sometimes imagine like what if I had that same experience where I did some of the best work of my career. I made the website, ran the ads and the email marketing and all the graphics, and he was more responsible for it. It was more his thing. He'd already built multi-million-dollar businesses. I'd never done anything. But what if I had done that experience with someone who did what I think was the right thing, which would have been maybe to at least a $50,000 bonus minimum, like bare
Mm-hmm.
minimum. But what if like, because I used to work with another buddy who was overly generous. What if he'd hooked me up with like $500,000, which my other buddy, we never built anything that big, but that was what he would have done, something like
Mm-hmm.
that, or even half, maybe even not,
Right.
probably not half, but like a third or something. Well, my life could be completely different. And so I see that how is that a reflection of myself? Why did I manifest that experience with that particular type of personality and that type of individual? Like taking responsibility of that as a reflection of my relationship with myself.
It's a
And but
great question.
that did expand my sense of what I feel is possible, because
Mm-hmm.
when Omicron was announced, it was just sale after sale after sale after sale after sale. We cranked up the ad spend to like $5,000 a day, and we were doing like $60,000 a day in sales, and we had to hire extra people in the shipping department, and it was absolutely nuts. And it was so exciting to be a part of that, even, and it could have been life-changing money for me, which it wasn't, but it did expand my sense of what's possible. And so that was really cool. And so now
Mm.
with Tribe Builders, I carry that experience with me of like
Mm.
this could really blow up and be really, really big, but
Yeah.
with total integrity, like, and it's purely my thing as well. Like I'm open to collaborations, but I'll always maintain some sense of like ownership, which I love that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what comes up for me when I hear that story is like, sometimes we manifest something because of the vibration that we're holding. And
Mhm.
sometimes we have life experiences that are there purely to teach us a lesson, like
Yes.
I call them a soul contract, that somebody comes into your life to teach you integrity or overcoming heartbreak or, betrayal or whatever those things are. Sometimes you're on your path being as in integrity as you can, but you have these life experiences that are sent to teach you something in this incarnation that teaches you, maybe in your case, integrity, which is like, okay, this is what it looks like to be fucked over. It expanded my
Yeah.
possibility. I learned what it's like. I look at my own journey with heartache, which was the first time I really fell in love with a woman. I was on this eat, pray, love journey. I was about 2 years into my travels. I've done all this personal work. I'm calling in partnership. I'm like ready to find the woman of my dreams. I've got my vision board. I've got my yoga instructor that I'm calling in. I'm clear about what I want. I know how law of attraction works. I manifest this woman. I'm like, fucking golden. This is it. She ticks all of the boxes, super gorgeous. She's everything that I need. And so I'm
Mhm.
cruising, and I think I understand exactly how this works, only to be ghosted like within a few months, and she disappears and goes back to
Ouch.
something else. And I'm like, fuck, what is that about? Like now I'm back to the
Yeah.
drawing board. My heart's broken wide open. And on reflection, I was like, oh, I see what happened here. I've ghosted quite a few women in my life because I felt like I wasn't able to be completely honest with them. Like I have a people
Mm.
pleaser. And so where I felt like a relationship wasn't always going to be a full yes. And even when I could feel that the women perhaps wanted something more, I would either avoid the conversation or, so that I could keep getting laid or my needs met, I would maybe not be completely honest. And then when it got too heavy, I would just pull away and disappear. And so this needed to happen in my life for me to have the
That's
opposite experience.
exactly my thing too. All of everything you just said is exactly, and then
Yeah.
it's like yeah, I've gone through that. Like, oh, it hurts so bad
Mm. So,
experiences.
and
Yeah.
at the time it was heartache, and I was like, the world's unfair, and she was the one, and I'll never meet somebody as amazing as her. And then I was like, okay, this is something for me. There's something for me here. And I realized in that
Mhm.
moment that, yeah, I don't want to be treated like that again. And I'm fucking really sorry to everybody that's been like treated like that by me in my past. They don't deserve that. And I could see the damage that it causes. And as
Mhm.
painful as the lesson was, it was really important for me. So yeah, sometimes the things that come into our life is, yeah, exactly what we need, even though it's not what we want.
So true. And I've been working on really cleaning that area of my life up where I was maybe a little misleading or sort of
Mm.
acting what I felt like they wanted to in order to, be intimate, and then I would just kind of ghost and a lot of that. And
Mhm.
I'm trying to really clean all that up. And
Beautiful.
well, I've just been taking a break from dating in general, like nothing. And I haven't used Tinder in probably 3 years, and I probably never will. Maybe I will, but
Hmm.
that was really good to get away from that. Well, you know what, brother? I love talking with you, and I typically go for about 45 minutes to an hour. We've been over an hour. Um, it's late in the day for me, so I was a little bit slow to start because I'm tired, but once we got into it, it was great. But I think let's kind of wrap it up. And but yeah, it's been a really amazing conversation. What kind of like last thoughts would you like to share with the listeners in terms of, maybe sharing where they can get more information, stuff like that?
Thank you. So yeah, all of my links are at garethpickering.com. And you can connect with me to work one-on-one. The relationship program will be there, and the father, sons, brothers links are all there. My free men's circle is there. The fathers, sons, brothers podcast is also available. So that's a way to be able to connect with me. Yeah, I think in closing, I would maybe share one of the themes of my own life, which is I really recognize that the most important relationship that I think we have is the relationship that we have with ourselves, and everything else in our life is a reflection of that relationship. And so, yeah, the more I invest in my relationship with myself, which includes forgiving myself for all of my, you know, grievances of the past or places where I haven't shown up in integrity or things like that, has really been the journey of coming back into alignment with myself and loving and accepting myself more. And the more I do that, the more my relationships with others start to improve. I manifest more, more secure and stable romantic partners into my life. I'm in a relationship now for the last 6 years. But not only that, my relationship with money improves, my relationship with addiction improves, my relationship with all these other things improve, and they're a reflection of the relationship that I have with myself. And so, yeah, the basis of my work is I can fall deeply in love with yourself, because the relationship container that I have is called From Solo to Soulmate. And many people think that the soulmate is the one that comes into your life and is going to be with you for this wild adventure. But the reality of that program and all of my work is really the only relationship that you have for your entire life is the relationship that Justin has with Justin and the relationship that Gareth has with Gareth. And so prioritizing that using tools like the first 4% and, yeah, forgiving yourself and accepting yourself and just deeply loving yourself has been the medicine for me. And so, yeah, finding whatever that is to be able to love and accept yourself and prioritize your relationship with yourself really is reflected in every other relationship that you have.
Hey man, it's so true. Beautiful. Okay, Gareth. Well, thanks for another great conversation. And yeah, I guess we'll be in touch. So bye for now, brother.
Thank you, brother, and thank you for the work that you're doing. I really appreciate you being in service of men, because it's such potent work. So thanks for having me on, man.
Yes.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, man. Okay, cheers.
Cheers.